Welcome to the channel. This is Reliable Rudy. Just getting a couple things set up here and then we will recap stock market and the sticky notes posted for today. Before I go into anything, you guys know I'm not a licensed financial advisor. Just simply sharing my opinion and I'm just a guy. I'm not perfect. Um, in the short term, I believe that it's just a big voting machine. I have a vote. Person next to me has a vote. Person next to him has a vote. Some people have bigger votes than others. Today was a Fed meeting day, so obviously a little bit more volatility. It's been a little crazy the last 30 minutes to an hour. Um, but that being said, I'm gonna post a couple things real quick, and then we will get the recap underway. So just give me just a couple minutes, and then we will start with the recap. And everything looks good for the most part. Sound is good. Mic's turned on. Okay, so we'll start with the NASDAQ briefly, as I've updated a couple things. We still have our uptrend. We have a couple gaps filled in right here. That does not mean that the price is going to draw back to these gaps, but if we switch over to a 15-minute chart, today's FOMC meeting was very interesting level, and I talked briefly about the NASDAQ short that I added to earlier in the week. And I think the way that this channel is set up is very interesting because this is when the FOMC meeting kind of started going live. They had the announcements of the quarter point, and just connecting the tops and connecting these bottoms right here, you have a nice parallel channel. Now we do have, if I go over to the TQ, which is the 3 times leverage right here. I don't have the channel set, but you can see a lot of volumes coming in. And comparing that to how I have the NASDAQ drawn up over here, this is basically the channel in a sense that we're testing. So a lot of volume coming in. We could easily break over top of this channel, and who knows? Maybe we set another high on the NASDAQ as we have a nice flat top building right here. So looking over to the NASDAQ, you can see, we peaked over that top just a little bit on this, so not exactly the same chart. But I would say that this is a bull flag that's panning out, and if we are able to break through this descending channel, we could be setting a new top in the NASDAQ. Uh, so going over to the short, I did not participate in buying any of the short today. But you can see we have an ascending channel that, it's trying to hold. If this breaks, are we going to test these lows? Or are we going to break lower on the Nasdaq short? I don't know. But for the most part, until this channel breaks one way or the other, this is going to stay the same. And uh, yesterday, or maybe it was the day before. I think my memory's a little. Yeah, it was yesterday. We talked about the add to the Nasdaq short that we had, and these wicks came into that add level right there. So, pretty interesting that all this volume increase came in with multiple wicks into the area that I dipped into it a little bit yesterday, and you can see. If this was a bull flag, obviously this is upside down, but if this was a bull flag, and see we're putting in a green candle right here, so it is respecting the bottom end of this channel. So that is interesting look right there, if I don't say so myself. So going over to the start of the day, I'm going to pull over the Twitter, and this was the first. Yeah, I haven't even been keeping an eye on this, but this was the first sticky note that we had for the day, and I state I don't put any terms with it. But on the sticky note, I say it's a solid chart. It's above all moving averages. Above 58 looks good. Buy yesterday's close if it gaps up. So we will go take a look at KNX. And I did do a little bit of buying. I had 2 different orders on KNX, and I honestly I have no idea what it's even looking like right here. But you can see this is the opening candle for the day. You can see we gap up. Now all I did, I think my order was around 57.70 is when I got my first fill. And then on this candle, we put in a nice green engulfing candle. I did buy a little bit of the consolidation. I think it was a 58.04 fill. Now this candle did get a gap up, and all I simply wanted to do is buy the retracement back down to this gap. Now you can see the following candle, we get a nice gap up. The position is still relatively short, but going over to the daily, you can see we resisted this 58 area with multiple wicks. Uh, Nice positive break on the relative strength. This is a nice move. You can see when we gap up on this day, it retraces, and you do have gap fill buyers right here coming in, and a nice follow through. Yesterday we tested up to this 50. It didn't quite get up to 58, but this is why I said if the price gets over 58, I like it for continuation. Right here, I just simply have an uptrend drawn with the downtrend. Now there's a lot of trading in with this, and you can see these wicks kind of just back test. This is just a simple back test of the neckline right here. You get a nice follow through. You trade below that downtrend a little bit, but now it's holding that uptrend, and this is the follow through we've had. So not bad action off of that. And I would say this was a pretty successful start to a new position in my portfolio. So going over to, oh, I pulled it back over here, my bad. So then the second sticky note, I said AMD still on the descending channel. Keep an eye for the 82 gap. Now I was not a fan of their earnings. This, in a sense, $82 gap on a pretty significant gap down that AMD had. I insinuate that, downside risk, you got gaps at 76.50, 75, 70, and 64. Be careful. This was a name that we bought in January, and we will go pull up AMD. I'm not going to break down what I bought earlier, but we did take the positive break back in January. So this is January. You can see we have a positive break. It holds the level, and then you get the gap up continuation. Now we trim this name. I did respect this uptrend. I had this as an identified uptrend, and as it was trading up higher, you can see we wick into some of these gaps right here. In particular, this gap right here. This was a pretty decent sell, and it just so happens that that sell comes in at 100 flat. We have identified a descending channel. Now, when I stated that it's still trading inside the channel, when it opens inside of this channel still. We had this $82 gap. I did not participate in buying this gap, but if somebody was interested in buying the gap, we can go look at the action that it has. We wick into this 82 flat and back-to-back candles, and this gets a nice retracement for a nice $2 move. If somebody was interested in participating in this gap fill, they could have participated and trimmed this move all the ways up for a nice $2 move. Now, it doesn't seem like much because it's only this only takes place over an hour, but it was a nice 2.5% move if you wanted to participate in that gap fill buy. So I would say, the price is underneath that $82 gap. I would say that this looks bearish. If I were to just clean up this chart a little bit, yeah, setting a close underneath this gap, how's it going to act down here at this support? And this does look like this is that first gap, that 76.50, that just barely doesn't get filled. But right underneath that, you have your 75.25 gap. Underneath that, you have your 70 gap. Underneath that, you have your 64 gap. So this is why it's implied downside risk, as this earnings date does give you a fresh negative break. It tries to eke back positive into the earnings date, but all we simply did was retest these lows, and it rejects the level that you would want to be looking for a short. So in my eyes, this just looks like somebody was looking to go short into the earnings, and they got paid. So that was my look with AMD. Moving along, Disney reclaim the 200 day. The 200 day currently sitting at 101.39. Can it fill 102.20 gap? Breakout price over 102.60 is what I state. We're just still holding Disney. I did not participate in any buying. I like the position that I'm sitting at. And as you can see, we're sitting right at that 200 day. Is it going to set a close on the day above that 200 day? It's excuse me, one sec. Sorry about that. But we do get the gap up, and you can see that it didn't have the weakness to retrace back down to this gap. So if I was looking at maybe playing aggressive in front of this 200, you do have an open gap fill right there. But we can go look at how this reclaims the 200. So here's your 200 day, red engulfing, I'm sure the Nasdaq is probably catching a little bit of resistance. But if you were to take a trade as it reclaimed this 200, take one of these green engulfing candles. Look at what we ended up doing on the day. We filled 102.20 gap. It wicks into it on 5 consecutive candles. The move just from the 200 day, if we go down to this 101.40, we'll go from, it doesn't seem like much, but it was an identified level into some previous resistance, and you can see how these wicks never get over top of these highs. So it is rejecting that level for now, but I would say that this still has a nice uptrend. It's kind of giving up the ghost a little bit. So maybe that is a little bit alarming. But going over to the daily chart, you can see still relatively strong and it's playing the course. Is it possible for it to still break out over top of this level? You still have a little bit of time before the earnings. I think it's possible we get up into these 105 gaps. And I like Disney, even though it looks like it's going to set a close below that 200 day. And there's still a little bit of time. We have 45 minutes left in the trading day. So it's going to be interesting to see where where the close comes in at, and also where the open price is. Maybe it's just we reclaim the 200 tomorrow. Maybe if it sets a close beneath the 200, we end up getting a gap down and we retest this 100 flat level. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this one pans out. But going to the next sticky note, HBI. Nice flat top setup at 5:30. They reported earnings this morning. It was an earnings play. It's a positive break. Can it break 5:30? Let's go take a look because I haven't looked at this name in the back half of the day, but I was watching it earlier. Now you can see just on this 15-minute chart alone, you can see the flat top right here at this 530 level, and it just so happens that that 530 level is this previous low. So as you can see, it did not reclaim or get on top of that 530. If we go over to the daily, you can see we have a descending channel that's taking place. Is it set perfectly? I don't know, but you can see multiple days trading into that 530, and as of right now it's rejecting it, but we are getting closer. Relative strength of -24. This is a name that I didn't even look at the earnings report either, so I can't give you any details referring to the earnings report, but if it's able to claim this 525, 530 level and trade above it, maybe give a back test of this flat top, that is going to be a level that I'm interested in trading. As of right now at 499, can it hold 5 flat? If it shows me it can hold 5 flat, okay, maybe there's potential for it to eventually claim that 530. But as of right now, it's just a wait and see type of play for me. So that was another one. DAL buyers continue to hold 34 flat. The bull flag setup, respect the 50-day. These are simply just trims. If it is able to extend off this 34, I think the 50 days sitting right around 35 and change. And then 36, respected, I believe it's a gap. And then 36.75 to 37.25 is another trimming window that we're going to be looking for. So going over to DAL, this is a position that I do hold, so keep that in mind, but I'm going to try and give you unbiased. Now as you can see, you got 3 green candles, and this was a nice indecision candle yesterday, but you can see where it closes. I think the buyers still have a little bit more control than the sellers do, or short, whatever term you want to use. And you can see the low on the day actually doesn't even get down to 34 flat. So the wick low on the day is 34.05. And you can see on this candle right here, the wick on today's candle is a little bit higher, and it's still respecting the level. So going over to the 15-minute chart, you can see, let's go find the opening candle. So this was Tuesday, this is Wednesday. So the opening candle, right when I seen this wick down to that 34 level, I knew that this was a level, and you get a nice pop off that 34 level. What do? We trade right back into the same lows, and here we're catching another bid. Is it able to extend over top of this level? I'd say if I was marking this out, I'd want to see it set a close. It hasn't been able to close above 34.75. But here's the day before when we test that 50 day, and trims into that 50 day worked pretty good, so I would say respect that level. Now if it's able to get over and claim that 50 day, that is where we have our, right in front of 36, you have a gap fill right here. And if we go over to the daily, you can see that here's your gap fill. So this is simply just saying, hey, respect the level. And now the 3475 is this previous low, and the trim window that is represented is up to 3725. You respect the levels, you respect the 50-day, you respect the gap, you respect the trim window, and maybe you can hold a piece for a higher move up into maybe a 40 flat. Who knows? But all in all, I think that it's a decent chart setup and relative strength of -20, getting very close to that positive break. So, in a sense, if it's able to get that bull flag continuation, I think you're going to get that positive break. And I think anybody who's sitting short in this name, there was a lot of red volume that came in right here. Anybody who got in short off any of these candles, this is probably an area where some of those shorts, if they took profit, are reloading that short. But if you get that move higher and claim that 50-day, that's where I think some of the people short and off of these days are kind of going to get trapped and they're just going to cover their positions. That's the way that I see it. Is that how it's going to play out? I don't know. But what I do know is that this 34 level has been respected. So if we trade back down there tomorrow, I would say it's a justifiable trade to take the trade in the 34. Maybe it gives a false breakout down to that 33.75. I think there's decent support built in right there. So DAL is continuing to respect that level, so I think it's justifiable of a trade around that range. Let me make sure the volume is still going good. Yeah, it looks like we are still good on the volume. Then we posted a few parlays, and this was the rest of the day. So let's go over some of the parlays. The last couple days have been a little bit dry. I think the ones I posted yesterday, none of them hit, but the day before we had one hit, and um, so that doesn't mean that it's going to continue happening. At the end of the day, I can only put the bet in that I like. And what I liked for today, I took Rangers to win by 4, Astros to win by 2, Angels to win by 2. Pays out 23 to 1. I think the odds for a 3-leg parlay at 23 to 1 is pretty damn good. You can see the Rangers bet in itself is plus 360. So anytime you're taking a bet that's plus 360, more than likely the bet isn't going to hit. That's one thing that you're going to have to understand. That's the type of betting that I like to do. I don't like to put in a large amount of parlays that have better odds. I like to do smaller parlays that have uh, the larger odds in your favor. So what I said Arizona, first time starter on the road, win by 4 could be a stretch. So this is the Rangers to win by 4. It could be a stretch, but if it happens, uh, that's why I'm getting the good odds for the bet. I don't see the Giants taking 2 out of 3 versus Houston. Framber's on the mound, which is Houston's ace, so I like Houston to win by 2 and take the series 2 to 3. And the Angels bet, St. Louis is on a 5-game losing streak, and I think it continues because Ohtani, one of the best players in the league, is pitching for the Angels today, and Ohtani's undefeated on the year and has an ERA under 2. So that's attractive to me in itself. So I like the way that this bet is set up. And 23 to 1 odds, even if it doesn't hit, you know, it's I think the risk reward is there with this 3-leg parlay. Moving to the next bet. We have 10 to 1 odds on this 3-leg. Uh Yesterday, the Phillies game 1 and game 2, the Phillies have just got dominated. They have Aaron Nola on the mound, which is one of their better pitchers. And I stated yesterday that I don't think the Phillies get swept by the Dodgers. If it happens, it happens. But I'm betting for the Phillies to win by 2, and odds of 150 I think is justifiable. And I state right here, will the Phillies get swept? Question mark. I don't know. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm betting for the Phillies to take one of the 3 games, and that's why I threw that into the parlay. I bet game 2, so the Mets have a doubleheader today against the Tigers. They are on the road, but Scherzer's on the mound, and the Mets are good. Detroit, they're off to a better start than what they have been in the past. Uh, but at the end of the day, the Mets are just a better team than the Tigers. So I bet for Scherzer, game 2, which starts at 5:40, for the Mets to win by 3. And then the Blue Jays. Blue Jays, man, they just keep losing the close games. I think they lost by 1 back-to-back games, and I think they lost by 2 the game before that, and even the game before that they lost by 1. Will they get swept? They lose they keep losing the close games. What I state, will they get swept? Question mark. I don't know. So I think this three-leg parlay, I like this one, and it pays out 10, almost 11 to 1 odds. I think that's a decent bet. Now my same game parlay for the day, and this will wrap up the video. Unless we have some comments in the chat, I'll go take a look at that here in a second. Uh, but I bet that with the Orioles, it's Greinke versus Gibson. Greinke for the Royals is 0-4 on the year. Gibson's 4-0 on the year. Orioles, so that's insinuating that I like the Orioles to win by 3. I took the over at 9.5. Why did I take the over? Orioles have been more than 10 runs in 5 of their last 6 games. So I like the numbers 5 of 6, and that's why I bet the continuation of 10 runs to be scored. Gibson for 4 strikeouts. I think 4 strikeouts is reasonable. He's been under 4 strikeouts majority of his starts. One of his starts he had 11, so I call that kind of a fluke. But I needed something to add in there to up these odds just a little bit. And then I took Mountcastle for an RBI. If the over is going to hit, I think Mountcastle gets an RBI, and that's the reasoning behind it. So, if one of these doesn't hit, it doesn't hit. Just move on. But this was what I liked for the parlays, and that's what I posted. And that wraps up the rest of this live stream. I'll go take a look and see if anybody said anything in the chat. Doesn't look like they have. Uh, if somebody's still watching, I'll give a little bit of time for them to ask a question if they want to. But I am going to go check back up on the Nasdaq and see what's going on over there. You can see, it's putting in a red candle on the day now. Let me see if the index is. The Nasdaq just went red on the day. This is why these Fed meeting days, um, it, I would say respect this channel on the Nasdaq until I see something different. Until I see it pick a direction, then this is the way I'm going to be playing it. So I like the Nasdaq short. I think the stock market's overvalued, but at the end of the day, I'm a realist in that there is strength in the Nasdaq still. So I'm betting against strength, which is something that I don't like to do, but in my eyes, I think the stock market is overextended. If it breaks this flat top, I know where I'm wrong. I have an idea where it's going to go for an extension, and we'll try the short again at a later date. Uh, so yeah, that's going to wrap up the video. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys on the next video.